right, welcome everybody to what is the last of our brown bags this semester. We appreciate everybody being here. And today we have the Savoie, the College of Honors, to talk to us about diversity, inclusion, and honors.
Yeah, I thought I would focus heavily on the research component also with honors. It's our core requirement, and in fact, I'm working on some materials right now that shows the great emphasis that we have in undergraduate research. So, but yeah, I guess since we're a smaller group, let's introduce ourselves. And
Oh, okay. I'm Dr. Lover, and I'm the chair of the Undergraduate Research Council.
I'm Ann Price. I'm an associate professor in sociology.
My name is Lorena. I am a professor in the math department, and part of the undergraduate research committee, and part of MESA as well, a committee that serves Hispanic students here.
I'm Cordell. I'm GA for Dr. Laverne, and therefore Undergrad Research Council, Graduate Student History Department, and President-elect of the Association of Graduate Students. So I found that out last night.
Congratulations.
That was massive. So I'm excited.
I'm Laura Northup. I am an undergrad English major. I'm a student assistant with the Honors College and the president of the Honors Student Association.
Congratulations to you too.
Thank you.
Mike Savoie, Dean of the Honors College. And Emily, we're not sure which Emily we have today.
Just Emily.
Okay, well, Emily, very nice to have you. If you would like to say anything, introduce yourself. Or not.
Just listening in.
Oh,
hi,
hi, Emily.
Hi.
Nice to have you. Diversity and inclusion is very important in terms of what we do in the Honors College. When I first came on board to Honors, we, no worries. I was an administrator in another college, College of the Arts, and when I was approached about doing this, I was somewhat fearful, thought there's a track record of success. A lot of good work came out of the honors program at the time as it was transitioning into an honors college. And when they did the search for a dean, I don't think they had a great deal of success, obviously, so they failed the search. And I was asked to step in, and I thought I would be taking on a temporary role. And again, I was approached and a little fearful of doing it because obviously there's a great deal of weight and gravity that comes with an honors program. I mean, you're dealing with the best students. You want to be able to serve them in a way that nurtures them. And I always, wanted to be a better faculty member, but you have the self-doubt that comes along with it. So I rejected it. And came to find out that we really were short-staffed at that time, as we are now. So they said, no, you can do it. And I said, well, look, I'll do it, but I really have some conditions. And one of the conditions was exactly what we're going to talk about, and that's diversity, inclusion, social justice. I said, I really want to be certain that we're focusing on global things, on issues, social justice. If we're dealing with high-level students, we're engaging them to think deeper and more reflective about society and how we contribute to society. It needs to be woven into that. And I know we had programs on this campus that were already rooted in those thoughts and ideas, but I thought I would feel better because I did not want to close sort of the elitist type group that feels we're just better than everyone else. So I came in with the blessing of the administration at the time. That administration, again, assured me that that was a really relevant and important direction for them also. So And I'm sorry I'm speaking more about my story, and I'll get to how this translated for the Honors College, but I started in September of 2012, and then right at the beginning of October, I found myself at my first National Honors Conference. And the National Collegiate Honors Council does a really good job of building honors leadership and supporting honors programs in colleges. I mean, there's a good deal of continuity in that professional organization. And so on the Wednesday before when the actual conference starts, they have a full day boot camp for new directors and deans and leadership. And I went there, and you're put in your sort of peer and aspirational sort of pool. So I wasn't with the research institutions, I was with other regional comprehensive schools. So you're getting a lot of parity from the people you're with. But when I started listening to other people around the table, the more seasoned people and the new people, I came to understand there was a great deal of alignment in our thoughts and how we viewed honors. And honors, for me, one of the reasons I've stayed with it, and I feel more fulfilled being here and sort of building my career in honors education, is that the national organization has taken a strong lead in DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and social justice, has connected us to a lot of these principles, and has really grounded it in the undergraduate research sort of paradigm also. So those things really had a lot of purpose and meaning for me. And just to give a little bit of insight into my life, my personal life, I started as a professor in media. My background was as a filmmaker. So I came to VSU from the entertainment industry. I had worked professionally for years before becoming a professor, and I grew incredibly disenchanted with working in professional media in the film world. I worked in narrative films and commercial production and the music industry, and it's a fairly rough business to be sort of basic about it, but it's all about the bottom line. I guess like a lot of business areas, bottom line, and it's cutthroat.
University, of course.
Yeah, well, it's worse. We think about the business model and how we've become more like business, but it's still incredibly different. And some of the abuses I saw in that industry really made me feel that becoming an educator would give me more purpose. So, Fred's here. So I've always seen education as a place for freedom of thought, for personal autonomy, for us to sort of self-determine. And again, I always thought the notion of a professor defining their research agenda and sort of doing that in a responsible way was a really fulfilling thing in life for us. And that's why I think we translate that, and that translates to what we do with our students in trying to nurture them to do undergraduate research. It's not just about the higher level thinking, but it's also, or higher order thinking, but it's also about seeing them sort of become their own people with their own thoughts and ideas and their own unique approach to solving complex problems. So again, coming back to my role in honors, so when I came here and I knew that we had really excellent students who were incredibly motivated to do things, they were looking to engage in higher order thinking and research, but then if we could sort of weave in the sort of social justice and DEI sort of perspectives, we really could have a wonderful program. And so I really thought purposefully to connect with a lot of our other programs and other divisions across campus to engage in that. And it's not perfect. It has not been a resounding success, but it's things that we've made inroads to do. It's still something we talk about greatly. I don't think you ever check the box and it's solved. But again, with the guidance of the national organization, what we're doing at this institution. I feel like we're pushing it. We've seen an incredible uptick in honors diversity. Now, I think affecting the equity piece is a little bit more difficult because the needle moves a lot on success. You know, you can bring in diverse candidates, and we did that through making changes to admissions procedures here and looking at other ways of approaching academics. And I think that that relates to our research mission with the council, you know, to bring people in and engage. And I think when we bring people in and to kind of not be overly basic about this, but you know, the methods are different for different disciplines and approaches. We find those methods that we connect with through our disciplines, you know, and being from media and then next education, you know, I had more of a qualitative sort of interpretive approach to research, and that's where I continue to do my work, as opposed to, you know, in education as a qualitative component. I'm not as happy in that area. You know, however, we're talking about statistics and methods as being important. Coming in here and finding my place, I knew that students needed to do the same thing to find that self-fulfillment. But it also included some experiential things, you know, so opening up those opportunities to students is really how we sort of grounded everyone. It's a delicate balance. I don't think, I look at some programs throughout the state, because we have a pretty close state organization. They, some of them are a lot more rigid in their approach. And I'm not saying that's bad. I think rigid gives students a lot of clarity about what they need to do. And students, I'm not speaking ill, but it's nice when you can say to the student, you know, look, you got to do this, this, and this, and that's it. It's done. There's a comfort in giving a great deal of clarity. But like life, that clarity is not always consistent with a variety of people and opportunity. And we see this with standardized testing. You know, certain groups of people tend to excel at that, and we leave a lot of other people behind. So if we're going to adhere to this sort of diversity, equity, inclusion paradigm, we wanted to give people a variety of approaches to fulfill requirements, but also to engage in higher order thinking and to do research. So we played with a lot of models here. And that was one of the terms, me coming into honors, was to allow some innovative approaches that were potentially, you know, slippery areas. I mean, we had some failures. We did, because we had to still run an academic program where we would assess things and look at completion rates. Well, we brought in diverse students, but we saw retention kind of drop on some things. And it's kind of like, you know, a chemistry experiment where you're mixing in things and trying to get the right levels, and we'd have to pour this in and take something out. And some years we have great success, but our demographics are always changing. We've tweaked and refined student support. You know, how do we give students funding to bring in a variety of students, to specifically target students and say, okay, well, you're a student population that doesn't usually get access to these funds, and that has helped tremendously. We looked at second-year funding programs to where if you were not part of that, especially if you were an underrepresented class, we could do that. So we've seen that sort of elevate and lift student populations. The one of the negatives here is that we have seen our male population decline greatly. We are
Do honors specifically? I mean, I know the university as a whole, but is honors decline even more than the university as a whole?
Even more,
Okay.
yes. So if what are we, like 65, 35 university? We're probably 80-20 ticking up. So yes.
Now, why would that be a concerning issue, that the male population is declining?
Well, we don't want males displaced out there in society doing bad things either. You know, when we see populations decline in education, there'll be problems down the road.
But what about specifically males?
Why they're not coming?
Yeah, no, why would that be concerning? I'm trying to understand the context a little bit.
Because we'd
Why
like to.
male decline, what does male decline indicate?
He's not saying that, I don't think, if I understand you
Yeah.
right, he's not saying that specifically having males decline is bad, it's any group that declines
Oh,
is
Any
bad.
any particular group,
It
okay.
happens to be males.
It's
It happens.
continuing to decline, and we could get down to the single-digit
Okay.
percentages, which is not good. We would like to see parity with the university.
I see.
Statistics,
So
but-
you're aiming at that standard with the
Correct.
university, okay.
Yeah, and I think it's a great concern when you're seeing male populations decrease across higher ed also. Again, and I think diversity, equity, and inclusion has a lot of variables in there. And I want to be clear that I don't think when you give males an opportunity, we don't want to take opportunities away from females. We want that to be a balance because, and this from a sociological standpoint, if we're not serving males down the line, there's going to be some disruption there. And so I think that's the concern that we see. So again, we're experiencing that continual increase in female enrollment. So any comments about that?
Not specifically about that, but just because I have general questions I don't understand about honors, could I ask one of them now? It would make everything else make a little bit more sense.
Absolutely.
What percentage of the students in honors come in straight from high school, like they're admitted to the honors college, versus the ones that have been here? Do they have an opportunity after their freshman or sophomore year to join honors? How's that done? Because I was thinking, okay, this is my thoughts of how it relates to diversity and inclusion. We already know for the college admissions process, parents with a higher education themselves, parents who are more affluent, parents who have more time at home, along with those students that are in the, schools and environments that are telling them these are the programs you need to be applying for. You're someone who should be considered for the honors program. They're more likely to, do that. Whereas at VSU, we can be more advocates as professors to say, I've got this student in my social problems class. If they're not in honors, they seem like they should be, right? So that's something I haven't known, is how many come in straight from high school versus we get to sort of recommend additional ones to join.
The majority of them come from high school into honors. But we do accept current students to apply. We have to do a better job of targeting students through the admissions process also, which we have. We've looked at the changes. Although looking at this year, our deadline for scholarship applications was last Friday, so I spent most of the day yesterday going through applications and reviewing. We had a lot more underrepresented students applying, and that's really good.
Yeah.
So the challenge is for us, it's not that, we're not getting them from high school in. It's whether or not, how much credit they're bringing in, because we're still getting advanced students. And I think one of the issues that we're dealing with and the stigma is that we're hard, that it's going to be difficult on the students. But,
But that's good in a way, right? I mean,
it
at
is.
some point you do want some expectation that the honors college is meaningful in that kind of way, I guess.
Well, you need to have rigor, but rigor can mean different things. So, the challenge is all the advanced credit that we're dealing with also. So it's we take a good deal of students who have interest in coming into honors after they've been enrolled. It's rare that we'll reject them, especially if they have the GPA requirement. But we just don't get a great deal of them. And again, I think it's about the communication that's out there, because it's not necessarily the case that we're excluding students because of their community or what group they're in. It's because the stigma of being in honors, so,
The stigma, really?
Yeah.
absolutely.
What do you mean? Can you explain that?
Well, that this is not their place or their group.
Okay,
Oh.
okay, I understand that.
And so we have to sort of address that culture. We had a graduate assistant here who was doing her doctoral work, Laura Hanna, and I should be happy to point that out. And she did a really good study on how underrepresented student classes see honors. What were the successes and what were the failures? And just the sort of makeup of it, the impression that they get was sort of off-putting to students. So they're not willing to approach it. So when you bring in students, you also have to give them an inviting atmosphere and show them that this is going to be a place where they can flourish and succeed. But one of the reoccurring themes from that study was that I don't see people who look like me. So it's
Well,
chicken and the egg.
that's the SU as a whole too, because
That's interesting.
that's one of the things on the strategic plan is
That's
increase faculty diversity to make it, I mean, to some degree, right, it's on there anyways as a goal to
But I
increase.
think they have been working on it a little bit.
What was
Depends
another
on your
question I
perspective.
had? What was I thinking about that? Oh, I know what I was thinking of. It's interesting, when you were talking about standards and who's admitted to the honors college and thinking about the more inclusive standards versus something like a certain SAT score or a certain GPA, but the ones that are more inclusive, like, well, anyway, my perspective on this is, I've read a bit about this of how it works with the gifted programs in the K through 12 school, but most of the admissions to the gifted program, is happening when the kids are young, kindergarten through about second grade or so. And in Georgia, they moved towards this route that they thought would be more inclusive and would get greater diversity of underrepresented groups by not focusing specifically just on IQ score mainly, I mean, originally it was just sort of basically like a IQ percentage cutoff, and now it is, they still give those intelligence tests as part of it, but there's other ways students can present work, like project-based, like an example of their art, something like that. Anyway, the interesting part about it was that in a lot of cases, they haven't found it having the intended effect whatsoever, because what happens is then parents, and I mean, again, it comes back to sort of like parents and organization and who has the knowledge in society, and also sort of the, what do we call it? Like the cultural capital to feel like they can talk to the teachers as equal. But
And the real capital to pay for things.
the real capital doesn't hurt either, but so it would be, the same student who maybe would have been not quite made it for the IQ cutoff, but the same student would now be admitted. It would just be that they would now have their art that was entered as a second way of demonstrating their creativity. So I mean, I thought that was completely interesting, because I just got interested in reading about this because my own kids are at the Valdosta City school system, and within that we can see the same problem of the gifted program being not representative of the school as a whole whatsoever. And I thought it was something that when it was designed, it sounded like such a good idea, make the standards more inclusive to allow for greater diversity. And then there's just to read, it was disappointing to read that it hadn't had the intended effect. And then you almost wonder if it's worse than if there was just a straight, IQ, whatever intelligence test cutoff, or for like an honors college, just a GPA or percentage of your like ranking in your high school class or SAT cutoff, just because at least then it's like, well, at least you can see exactly what the criteria are. So could you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Well, we made changes to the admission standards. Probably the most damning were the standardized tests.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to do white males and white females, upper middle class, tend to do much better on the standardized test. So we removed that.
Yeah.
What we looked at was GPA, and we even allowed for some variance on the GPA. So if you were in a range, we would still take you. We rarely reject students. What we will do, even if they're in some problem territory, we'll accept them provisionally. We'll say, come on in.
Yeah.
You can take an intro class, which is a general first-year seminar course. Let's see how you do in that class. If you can pull a B or better, if you're connecting with the principals and deans, we have a pretty regimented first-year seminar. So we have specific things that we're looking for, specific objectives, benchmarks, and outcomes. And so it's not based on one sort of standard. So we look at a variety of things, including diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, the social justice theme is supposed to be woven in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives students an opportunity to maybe delve into some subject areas that are not as sort of standardized, and gives students the ability to say, okay, I can function at a high level in this area as opposed to that. And I think we all have our weaknesses and strengths, regardless of what the demographic is. So we changed that. We asked for a writing sample with very specific prompts, and the prompts were not like, tell us about, how successful you were, what are you going to do when you come here? We really wanted to look at a prompt that sent students to search a more abstract concept, to look at it and to kind of, give us do you have an understanding of this? How will you engage with this type of activity, such as research or experiential learning? And how do you see yourself in the sort of hierarchy of Bloom's taxonomy?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted something that made people go look and tell us their thoughts and opinions about it. So it gave us an idea of whether they could write, but also how they could sort through this abstract conceptualization.
Mm-hmm.
And we usually take students, even if they're having trouble with it, because those are things we can teach people, but we need to see that the effort is being made to go out there, find that material, and plug it in. So it's a lot more varied and holistic than that. Then the last component of the admissions process is the letter of recommendation from someone who's been there supporting the student. And we find that that's the important thing, because that talks about the motivation. So those are the standards that we look at. In very rare situations would we reject a student. Again, we're going to give them the opportunity. That does not mean that we retain and complete. And that's where the problem is. And our retention rate's about 50%.
I was going to ask about that.
It's not good.
50%. Yeah, so I'm very new to much of the work as a faculty, as a committee member of multiple committees. And in my background up to this point has been mostly in mathematics, statistics, and some education too. So as you're sharing some of the information, like the retention rate and what you've been doing and how you interpret the results of the data you've been gathering, I'm wondering about how you're managing your data. Do you have a statistician who works with you, or how do you handle that?
I've asked.
Yeah, I've asked.
Yeah, if you would like to help us, I'd be happy to have you look at it.
Okay. Have you asked the math department about that?
Not directly,
Not directly.
but
Okay.
I've asked institutional effectiveness and our data management teams. In fact, I wanted statistical data on our scholarships,
Yes.
who we're giving them to, what are the, what's demographic information, what's the retention?
Yes, because I think, as a math department, and I'm not the head of the department here, of course.
Mhm.
I'm just faculty who happens to be very enthusiastic about multiple things. So I was thinking that, a partnership with at least one of us, and I can put myself out there a little bit, would be very important, because then, we already have mathematicians on campus. I am a mathematician, and I know a little bit of the stats and things I don't know well, I can ask. And there are people that know a lot about the stats, and I have a lot of experience in the math department. So if there is a way for us to collaborate, so that, we are professionals, we have degrees and all that stuff, and we can come up with something together, that would be great. Because it's great to look at qualitative data. And stats also deals with quantitative data, by the way.
Oh, no, we need to look at quantitative data
And
too.
also quantitative. So I think having a statistician or someone who's willing to, get the numbers and all that stuff, and I can put myself out there a little bit and help you connect some more, would be very important to the school.
That would be really helpful.
You could also touch base with people like Rudy,
Yeah,
and it's all he does is, so he's a statistician, that's all he does. But the problem is that adds more to faculty workloads
correct.
than we can do.
Unless
So-
we publish something from it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the thing would be, like in my case, for instance, there is someone who's been playing the role, like I have various mentors across campus, right? Because I'm new, I arrived here for one year. So there is someone I know who has been playing the role of one of my mentors, who is a professional statistician, and she's extremely busy.
Mhm.
I just arrived, so I'm also kind of busy. However, if we could negotiate something, so say towards publications, so it counts towards my tenure, it counts towards my thing, so it's not one more thing on my table, then that would be great. That would be very interesting though.
Yeah, this was pre-pandemic. We took all of our scholarship data. I waited until we had 5 years of data to look at. And we were looking to do a study, and there were several publications that we could have modeled our study
Okay.
off of and plug that in and get the,
Yes,
and I shopped it around to a lot of people who are
Yes.
higher level statisticians than I am.
yes,
And we just didn't get it. But I mean, we can interpret it to some extent. I mean, I can see if we give us a stipend,
yes,
or if we don't give a stipend. I need to look at some variables as to, are we losing them completely? Are
Yes.
they're not here because of the grades? They're here because they left the institution, which half of the honor students will transfer out after 2
Interesting.
years.
How big of a population are we talking about per year? Like, what's a yearly cohort of honor students coming in?
We bring in 100 to 125
Okay.
students a year, so
Okay.
we will graduate 50
Okay, got it.
of that 100.
Yeah.
That's been the general, that's been
Yeah.
the standard. So I don't need to do high-level statistics to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
those numbers.
Yeah.
but
So
there's
we,
some,
some other things that we can look at.
I would definitely be.
Knowles wants to make a plug for social sciences
Yeah, I saw that.
statistics.
I was gonna say, I do this as well, so I
Yeah.
mean, it's, not that I'm exactly volunteering,
Yeah.
not
No, no.
signing up,
I'm gonna
but
try to
it is,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
It's one of those things that I think that we can all agree needs to be done.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to get back to your talk about diversity and inclusion, because one of the things that Annie's talking about is that we get these from K through 12.
Yeah.
And as you know, because you and I have talked about it, I was honors director for like 10 years in another institution, and we talked about this. There's a difference between being gifted and hardworking. And we have to look at that, but we also have to look at the fact that when we get those letters of recommendation, we're dealing with K through 12 teacher prejudice. And so when we look at the fact that for our Black boys, they test out the exact same on those tests, and then it's the interpreter who decides whether they are ADHD or gifted, but the results are the same. So there's a lot of factors that go into this. There's one student, And because of her background, because of her race, she was told by her counselors, well, you should go tech. You should go to tech. But so a lot of the advisors K through 12 are also very white oriented. And so we've got to, if we do rely on that K through 12, we're having real problems because they're not going to put Black men up as they come up to graduate. And so we've worked on that, and that continues to plague.
Yep.
It's the same problem with the symposium.
Black males are our smallest population.
Yeah.
But one thing anecdotally that we've had success with is if a Black male comes to honors, generally there's a high percentage that they're going to complete. So there's a higher retention, and because I guess students have already had such adversity and struggles that they've got that tenacity,
Yeah,
grit they call it.
And
You know,
that-
I don't care for that term, but
I was going to ask, related to some minorities, how is the Hispanic population doing in
It's
honors?
ticking up, and camp has helped
I've noticed
tremendously.
that, because we have a lot of them in our
Okay.
sociology
Yeah.
program who have been
I
honors
see.
and camp both. They're coming to us, they've been through both, and they're excellent students.
I
And,
see.
and we're really pleading with the camp program, when they run out
Yeah,
of
the camp
funding
program, exactly, yeah.
after the first year, we'll support them in the second, third, and fourth year.
Okay.
And we can't pay complete, fees and tuition, but we can lend support, which is what we do.
Yeah.
So that's what we offer students. We're like, hey,
That's nice.
you should apply because we'll give you support.
Yes.
I had a thought and I kind of left my brain. That happens a lot with me, but the issue with Black females is getting Black females wanting to come to honors, and a situation that we had is one of the first year honor societies, Alpha Lambda Delta. It was supported by Student Affairs, and they decided they didn't want to do it anyway. They said, well, it wouldn't be logical to put it in the honors college. So I looked at it and I said, wow, these have some numbers that would really help honors in terms of diversity, because its largest demographic, ALD, are Black females. So I've been coordinating ALD for about 6-7 years. And whenever we have the induction ceremony, we'll have that large student representation there, and I tell them, you can be in honors. We will let you just by sitting in that chair, you can be in honors right now, because that GPA matches what we ask for. So I said, we will take you right now. You just say the word, you're in honors. Every year I do that, I may get 1 or 2 students. That's it. So again, it's the stigma of, that's not my place, I don't want to be part of it. And that's on us too. We've got to change that. And Laura, we've talked about this her entire tenure in HSA, Harvard Student Association. How do we change that? How do we create an environment that's more inclusive and brings people in and makes them feel valued? It is a hard sort of shift.
It is. The population in K through 12 honors programs or gifted programs, I hate the term, are largely white. I mean, they are without color. And so by the time they get here, they see honors as the same thing. And so there's this inbred sort of problem. And it's difficult to overcome.
I sometimes wonder how much, I don't know this, and maybe you know this, the statistics on it better, Lavana, but I've got the impression that it's more of a problem, this whiteness of gifted in South Georgia than it is.
No.
You don't think that's true?
No, it's pretty much across. I mean, people like to say that kind of racism is worse down here. It may be more obvious,
That's not worse.
but it's equally
Yeah.
problematic, if a little bit under the table when you go to northern regions.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more subversive
The South's just honest about it.
Yeah, they tend to be right out there in your face with it. But across the United States, when we look at K through 12, that's where we're running into the problem with. Then by the time they get here, we have to reverse that, and trying to reverse that against honors and against even symposium.
I
It's
have
very
I have
difficult.
a question, as far as like, are there specific policies as far as how race and gender are looked at in terms of honors? Like, you know how different,
Good question.
Good question.
This is a little bit non-related, but this was years ago once. I had one of the city planners come in and talk to, my students were doing, well, this was back before we called it experiential learning, I guess, but it was the same thing. They were doing a project for the city, getting census data on the different neighborhoods, and then, so, just basics. Average income of the census tract, racial diversity, access to a vehicle, and then looking at where the funding for different projects was in the comprehensive plan for the next 10 years that the city was putting together, and making sure that there weren't areas that are being neglected. But me, having always come from a sociological standpoint and having taught my students the same way, my idea was like this. Obviously, you look at those poorest areas in the city and you target them. So you would say, this is where our sidewalk, our road expansion, whatever our park redevelopment, whatever we're needing, whatever we're planning is gonna go into these areas. And the city planner, and it was just the policies of how they do it. And of course, you might say, probably people coming from a business background or economics, this would have been common sense to them. But the city planner was saying, this is just our, can't remember what it was called, but it was basically like their equity report that my students were helping with. And what they have to show is that the spending was equitable. So across all areas of the city, that means if it's a school like, it's not that they do schools, but if it's an area like, well, this is city too, so it's not Stone Creek. My examples don't work well. But if it's an area of the city that's really doing well already in terms of infrastructure and things like that, they have to spend just as much on that area as they would on an area that's not doing well, right? And that's, I mean, of course, if you think about it, it's funded by tax revenues and government allocations, and those are based on population density and all those kinds of things. So it makes sense. But then I keep thinking about it here, because my sociological approach is always something like this. Would we just reach out, partner with admissions and say, every, African-American male who comes in with a GPA of 3.5 or higher, you put that all in a file and you send us, you send me the list of them, and I'm gonna get in contact with them and say, can I meet with you individually to say, this is what honors is and this is why it would be good for you. I wondered how this all ties into university policies, because at the same time, we want to target underrepresented populations. At the same time, that's not to say that anyone else who's a talented student coming from, a talented school and of a majority race, we would want them to be, we have limited numbers of seats in honors. So how, are there specific policies? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, are race and gender specific policies, specific things that we check off? I'm also thinking of other times I've been on hiring committees at universities. I remember there was this time I was on a hiring committee at Ohio State. Actually, I wasn't on it. I was the grad student representative on it, so I didn't get to do the hiring, but I got to see how it worked. And I remember there was a really interesting, there was I can't remember, I think it was an Asian American applicant, and the essay described a lot of the adversary, like things that they faced in their life. And I remember them saying, this is not one of the lists, not one of the categories that's on our list. So it's sort of like it was publicly said that this is not one of the areas that we're specifically hiring for. So whereas other areas we were. Anyway, can you talk to that at all, like how that works within honors as far as, can you look at demographics? Are you encouraged to look at demographics? Are you not? How does all that
I
work?
wouldn't say I'm discouraged.
Yeah.
You gotta get the data, so I have to put in a special request for that.
Yeah.
I mean, would I love it to just come my way? ALD kind of just fell in the lap.
Yeah.
Because I looked at ALD and I said, okay, this is a demographic that we need to target.
Yeah.
But even when you reach out to people, there's still the impressions, the stigma that I'm just not gonna go there. We look at incoming students and we target based on the grades without any information on demographics.
Okay, that's sort of what I was interested in.
And we just send in mass, you are encouraged to apply for honors.
Yeah.
And we talk about the financial implications also, that we would be willing to support you. And we changed it because the way support was targeted before was through lists. So, and those lists were mostly middle to upper middle class white people that are being targeted for funding support, as opposed to just looking at the entirety of students who meet the standard, the academic standard. So we said, let's look at the academic standard and just take that entire pool and evaluate them based on, their achievements and award them funds. And so it's opened up funding opportunities to a lot more students. And we are looking at demographic information on that. In fact, when we revised our scholarship materials, we said, let's make sure that we fund, underrepresented students at the same level as population to the institution.
Okay, that's okay. I'm getting that.
So if we're at 45%,
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna allocate funds to. So,
Is that a common practice among institutions to kind of like keep to that?
not really, no.
Oh, okay,
I don't think so. I think a lot of people feel just fine giving money to the people who need it least.
okay, gotcha.
And that was a real problem of mine. I really had an issue with that. Why?
I can see
And I got a lot of grief from pretty well-to-do white people why their checks weren't coming in.
Sure.
I'm like, well, you could probably afford.
So you're actually introducing quite some innovation.
Well, I knew one other thing we had to do with underrepresented populations was not just say, oh, we care about you and want you, we had to give them support.
Yeah.
Meaningful support.
Yes.
And so we're still, it's not perfect, we're still striving for how to do that. And there is still the retention issue and success issues. How do we make sure that students can be successful and feel comfortable, and feel like they have a place, Tess, and I know you're, a convenient sort of target for me, but Tess came in last summer, just graduated high school, and like a ray of sunshine, just started working with us.
That's so awesome.
You were not awarded a stipend initially, so we said, let's give her some funding. And I really, going into your second year, I want to see you become a leader. You are a leader. I think you're recognized, and you too. I think we've got a strong cohort of students, and they, we need to nurture those, and that's kind of the difference with this academic program to others. They don't have to be here. They can leave here and get a degree, and they do. So I've got to make this an inviting, accommodating space.
It's a difficult thing to do because all this comes with a history, and the history of demographics includes the internalized oppression that these students come in with. So they're already assuming that they can't do this, that this is not for them. And we see that in the symposium as well. They just are pretty sure that this is not their form and their place, and they're very uncomfortable with it. We've made some inroads, but it depends on so much faculty involvement of seeing these students and saying, you need to do this, but not just our middle and upper class white students, but all of our students. And that's a very difficult thing to get faculty initiative going on, is diversity.
I'm wondering along the lines of is talking about, do you have any mentorship program?
We have a couple. In
You
fact,
have a couple of mentorship programs.
one thing about honors, we do like initiatives to come from the ground up.
Yeah.
So I like for the students to implement these strategies. I'll talk about Briley's. Briley, Lauren Briley, I try to take several students to different conferences, especially on honors practice.
Yeah.
And at the national conference this past year, Lauren and Briley, who is one of our student assistants, came with me. And Briley went to a session on
Mentoring.
it's a mentoring program, but it's actually called a success program. So we have what we call the honors success program. So it's like a mentoring program, and she has an incredible diverse group of students she's working with, because we know we need to create the environment where people are seeing people like themselves, but also, connecting with the leadership. So
Thank you so much. I just realized I have a meeting at 1, so I'm glad I looked at the clock. But
good to talk to you earlier too. So Briley is in the first year of that, and we're still formalizing it, but it's got some
It's been
possibilities.
so successful because I've seen several honors student leaders try to go through, in my time at least, making these mentor programs, and all of them have been such flops. Like, they've just been bad. Nobody's been engaged, and it's been hard to get people to engage from both sides, whether it's the mentor or the mentee
Yeah.
perspective. But something about what Briley has done has just been so, and I think it's that it's genuinely just there to not necessarily be like a personal guidance, but like a program guidance. And with that comes a personal side. It's not about making friends in the college, it's about helping you get through the program, and in the process, that social aspect comes with it.
So the academic piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
So not just, hey, we're friends, let's go, eat together. Although we love that, and we do a lot of that, but this is about the sort of, and I was talking about this earlier, there are the rigid programs that ABC, we're kind of, here's a menu of things, and
Yeah.
you can kind of pick and choose.
Sure.
That's incredibly taxing on students who have, as I say, have always been in a structured environment.
Yeah.
Been told what class to go to, what time, and they're expecting that at the university level. What's the next class I need, and what is it available from 9 to 2? So when you give them honors, which is based on that problem-solving dynamic, that understanding of higher order thinking, okay, you have to strategize and think about what type of research you're going to engage in, what type of experiential work you're going to do. This is a curriculum map we're working on right now. It's color coded to say, okay, you can see that research and scholarship is three quarters of what we want you to engage in.
Yeah.
The service and experiential piece is 1/3, but it's heavily defined in terms of leadership and collaboration, global experience and understanding, and that's our diversity elements. So we want them to look at this, and it's it's complicated for them because some of them don't even have objective goals and ideas at that point.
But some of them come with a lot of issues too, and then they're also trying to figure some things out. Yeah, I can totally see. Okay.
One of the problems is that a lot of our K through 12 programs do not prepare our students mathematically or in terms of writing content. So they come here, and those are often felt to be embarrassments.
Yeah.
And so if they try and go into the honors, they may have to be vulnerable to showing that they have a
I
lack
can
of
totally see
skills,
that.
as opposed to it's just a lack of skills. If you don't play the oboe, nobody cares either. So we can teach you the skills,
Okay.
but for those who are coming in from these different backgrounds, and to answer Emily's question, I think Dean Savoie is absolutely on mixed race. It was just kind of pointed that we were using this as an example, but also a gender diversity, sexuality diversity,
Yeah.
all the different
Yeah.
groups. It's difficult to get all of those in there.
And we have an incredibly varied population of students, and I think we have a lot of LGBTQ students, and I think there's a lot of sensitivity in our community based on that. And I think it goes to the point where we do want to see male students successful also. I think I don't think our society's better served by some of this this undercurrent of anti-intellectualism that's out there.
Yeah.
And when you see that it's largely the base of this anti-intellectual movement is white males, I don't want to see those numbers decline, because if the only thing keeping the whole thing together is education. And so we want to serve all of our students, and I want every student who walks through that door who wants to get an education, you want to give them access, and it is about that equality. It's just that systemically, there hasn't been equality. It has been more oriented to the white males. And, you know, I'm living proof of that. And you know, I started the story about I didn't even want to do this, and I had the opportunity to do it. You can think about all the people who wanted to do something like this and who were dissuaded from it. So I know I have privilege, I know I have opportunity, and I've got to be concerned about that.
Now, I have a question for you. Let me just check the time.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about the following. So as I said, I'm part of the MESA committee working for Hispanic students. I am Hispanic myself, and I got hired by BSU very recently, and I think I can say to myself, I am very interested in working towards student success in general and minorities. For someone who is willing to invest the time and the effort into working with honor students, that might be me or that might be other people around. I'm just kind of like, getting a message from you, so I can tell others. Would they contact you? Is there something like an honors committee kind of thing, or?
One of my goals for next year, you know, this time of the year, much like with Undergraduate Research Council, I'm looking at what are my goals for next year.
Yes.
And so I do have a plan. I hate to say strategic plan.
I
It
know.
sounds so administrative, but I have a
We
list
gotta
of,
have a plan.
well, yeah, I have my goals and objectives, and I have actionable items, like what am I specifically going to do? And on my list for next year, I have 2 committees that I'm looking to sort of reinstate, and that's a very vibrant faculty committee that will have students also. So if you want to participate, I want students on that faculty committee because I think the faculty need to hear from the students. And then I need to have a community committee, which I've never had.
Okay.
In the community committee, I want people who, you know, composed of honors alumni who are still in the area, professionally engaged, to kind of give us some feedback of where we need to go. So those are 2 things, and I would be very happy to have you work with
I
this.
see. I can see, it might be myself, and I'm involved with multiple things, right? Multiple things. So I'm thinking, because I'm already part of MESA, and I'm hoping to, I might not be able to be one of those, but on the other hand, if there was some sort of partnership among committees, something like, MESA, like collaboration with others,
LASA and MESA.
last on this, and then you also have, like, I'm also currently at a committee for faculty, an interest in study engagement.
Awesome.
Working in engagement, we were talking a lot about, sense of belonging, community building, that kind of thing. So we already have that thing in the College of Science and Mathematics, we're aiming at that kind of thing, so if there's a collaboration. So I don't have to sign up for a new committee, because then it's too much on my table, right? It's too many meetings.
No, but we need to cross some lines.
Right,
In
right.
fact, we're looking to do more with women and gender studies and Africana studies, especially cross-listing some of our, we
Native
do.
American Indigenous studies.
Yeah, and Fred and I, we've talked about that. I'm talking about, the fact, and Fred knows, we tried to initiate an interdisciplinary council.
That's great.
And maybe I need to add a third point on my list to get that. But no, you're right, and I'm sorry for excluding that.
No, I'm just teasing
But
you.
no, it's serious. It's serious because
Then some of these committees are, some of us are already working on multiple things.
it
You
was
also have to stand people, like, and this is definitely common themes, like all of us engaged in them.
and we're duplicating a lot of
Yeah.
our efforts.
Yeah.
And that's where the interdisciplinary council came in. But Yasmin Guzman was she's one of our most successful students, and she was president of LASA, right?
Mhm.
for a while.
Oh, there,
Yeah.
she's awesome.
So we,
I see.
and Jesse Salas, who was one of our camp students also, who's now one of our graduate assistants.
Who's driving up. I hate to cut this off, but
Yeah, we,
people have to be.
yeah, I got a 1 o'clock meeting.
I know, you don't want to talk meeting, so I thank everybody for being here,
This was way better.
and we will see you next semester.
Oh,
Yeah, this was better than I thought. I
thank
thought
you.